So why do people do it? I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, the question is, no, stop it now.
No,
what
I
are
just
you
thought
thinking?
this is the all-purpose question. This one I gotta gather my files together.
The question is, why do people sign up for something like BillWhittle.com? And this isn't just an entirely self-serving episode, although certainly we hope it does serve the cause.
Self will be served.
Yes, that's right. And there's nothing wrong with that. Thank you, Ayn Rand. But what we got a new member this morning who posted immediately to our members only blog at BillWhittle.com with this message. And it made me think of a couple of other new members. And Bill, I just want to just bring up a couple of the things that they've said and just kind of get your reaction to them. This new member posts right to the blog and says, "Hi, everybody. I'm a longtime listener of Bill Whittle. Apparently, he can't bear to watch. Longtime listener of Bill Whittle, and I finally got the nerve. I finally got the nerve to sign up as a member and to try to connect with friendly, like-minded people. It gets lonely here politically in New York State, and was hoping to maybe make some friends. It is especially difficult as I am a married gay man, conservative-leaning libertarian, and the political climate here is hostile to me. I do not quite fit in anywhere around here, although I love the small, patriotic, friendly rural town I live in upstate. Thanks, and I look forward to being a member." Bill, as soon as I saw that note, it occurred to me that there are some on perhaps the other end of the political spectrum who would have been shocked, stunned, and gobsmacked and thought that this was some sort of hoax that we ginned up ourselves.
Undoubtedly. We've been talking about this many times. The left has invented a caricature villain that they can despise safely from the safety of their own couches, of course, and that this conservative Nazi not only has to be destroyed but deserves to be destroyed.
You mean you?
All of us. I mean the entire
all of us,
movement.
okay.
All of us. The entire movement. I am so struck by an interview I did. I cannot believe I've forgotten his last name. It's just terrible of me. His name is Brendan, I think. He was a gay activist. He was writer for Out magazine and so on. And he just started paying attention in 2016 and saw some things he liked about Trump, didn't like about the Democrats, became a conservative, a gay conservative. And when I was interviewing him, I said, I heard back what I'd heard so many times from many gay Republicans, and that is, it is much, much, much easier to admit you're gay to Republicans than it is to admit you're Republican to gay people. They simply just cut you out of their life. But what this guy said, I never forgot. It just absolutely moved me, nearly moved me to tears. I said, "What's the worst that you've heard since you became a Republican?" And he said, "Well, I did get one letter," and I'm thinking, "Oh boy, this is going to sting," you know. He says, "I got one letter from a guy who lived in Texas, and he said, dear sir, I'm a conservative, live in Texas, have a cattle ranch. I disagree with pretty much every moral position you've taken, but I just wanted to say welcome to the party, and we all love you, and we're glad you're here." That's the worst he heard. This is really important. The quality of the people that are members here really don't have anything to do with me, obviously. They're not responding to me. They're responding to the message. They're responding to this stuff that's just baked into this society of ours. And you and I had a discussion a while ago off camera about what it is we actually sell here. And common sense and decency is what it came up with. When I had the idea, when you and Scott and I were, you and Steve and I were preparing for the Ruth Bader Ginsburg episode, and each one of us independently, prior to being on camera, said, "Look, we don't want anything bad to happen to her. We're not wishing her dead or anything. You know, we disagree with her rulings, and frankly, it'd be nice if she spent her golden years with her grandchildren. That's fine, but we're not wishing this woman would die." You know, and I was just so impressed by that. So to this particular individual, welcome. I think you're going to find a real home here. We had, during the Stratosphere Lounge show last week, a couple people who had both physical health problems and mental health problems. And the community of people here just rallied to make sure that they, got the treatment that they need. And I just couldn't be prouder.
Well, Bill, here's another note, and this is from a new member named Ross, who just said, wrote an email to us and said, "I wanted to say that your channel is the most informative and eye-opening content I have access to. While I'd much rather be watching or reading about shooting firearms or all things knife-related, That only goes so far. Without the conservative message I read and hear here, I might no longer have access to the things I love, including God, country, and freedom. Please keep up the informative content.
You know, it's such a bland cliche to say things like this is why we do the job we do. You know, it's certainly not for the extraordinary pay. Um, this is the kind of payment that you can't pay for. I mean, this is just priceless uh, praise and compliments that make you feel like that you've done something worthwhile with your life. Me and you and Steve and all the rest of us who are out there, you know, in the kind of in the front lines in the spotlight anyway. Um, it is becoming now something that it wasn't 2 years ago. 2 years ago, as we mentioned, I think in the last Bill Whittle Now episode or the one before that, a floor for a firewall would be 300,000 viewers. And we have watched in the last year especially this ongoing concerted effort to just strangle us all out. Steve Crowder, you know, it's a big revenue hit that he took, and all across the board. And now it's not even a question of being a visionary or even like a patron. I genuinely mean this from the bottom of my heart. This is getting to be a patriotism issue now. It really is. It's getting to be an issue of do you want to let this happen or not? They are not. The government is not able to censor these messages. We've prepared ourselves very well against that threat. But to be on platforms that actively suppress the message and suppress all of the revenues that you would need in order to run a business like this is working. And we are here because of people who have decided that you know, I don't know how the relative value of BillWhittle.com compares to some of these other places that you can give your money to. I think, you know, 50 shows a month now is a sign that we're doing the level best we can. But it has that money has to go somewhere, and it has to go somewhere because if it doesn't, then they will have succeeded, and we can't let them succeed. We just can't. And you know, if I have to do this in my car on an iPhone, I'll do it. But we are doing our level best to get the message out here. And when somebody says something like that, and it's kind of related to what the first comments were, Scott, is that, and you were the one who saw this way before I did, that really what we have here is we have a very small community of people who have not only tremendous intelligence and experience and patriotism and so on, but just hearts of gold. And it's hard to find people out there in this world that are really just kind of almost advertising that. It's such a coarse place. I'm constantly struck by just the tone, the language of the people that are on the conservative side of the fence versus the people who are like the real progressives. It's just the coarseness of it, and the anger, and the just the decadence of it, and self-loathing, and all the rest. And as this poison filters down into society, you know, it's nice to have a place where, you know, where everybody knows your name.
Well, Bill, the majority of our members probably find themselves in the age group between about 35 and 65. We have those who are younger. We have those who are older. One in particular, I can't remember exactly how old he is, but his name's Nolan. He's a student. I can't recall whether he's a high school or college student, but here's what he said. And this he wrote to us a while back, and I've just been holding on to it. I felt obligated to help support the show that had given me so much insight, knowledge, and laughter. I watched Bill for a couple of years before I decided to join, and it felt wrong for me to have benefited from hundreds of hours of content without giving back to a show that I knew needed my support. Aside from that, I really love being part of a community of people who all share my values. Also, as a member, I can and do converse with Scott and the team regularly. The new website is shaping up to be a hub of interaction between everyone who is a part of it, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. Once you do it, you won't regret joining. I never did for a second. Bill, that, again, I think many on the left will be surprised that there are young people who think this way.
Well, yeah, and the work that I'd like to be able to move into is work aimed directly at the post-millennial generation and messaging them through video game content and that sort of thing. That's an entirely different discussion. But there's very few people on our side who understand the lack of appeal that traditional Republican GOP type and I'm sorry to say Tea Party conservatism has for young people. I'll just give you a quick example. You go to an average Tea Party event, and you stand up on stage and you're addressing those people. You look out in the crowd, the average age is deceased. It's just a lot of old people there, and nobody can really understand why there are so few young people. Then suddenly I realized about a year ago, Scott, I said, I've done 100 Tea Party events, and on the really nice ones, I'll be standing there, and there'll be the Constitution behind me and the beautiful handwriting, and here'll be like an engraving of Thomas Jefferson, and here'll be the Gadsden flag, and all the rest of it. And the mistake that we've made as conservatives, and we've made this mistake for a long, long time now, is that we always talk about our philosophy as if it's in the past. Everything we talk about holding dear, all of the concepts, all of the beliefs, all of the heroes, all of it, is 250 years old. Now, that's not to say that we need to abandon that reverence that we have for our founders. On the contrary. But what we have to do is we have to make it clear to everybody that those ideals are not something that's in the past. They're something that's in the future. This country becomes more perfect every year, more perfect union. In terms of the original sins and omissions of the country have almost exclusively been completely redressed now, and our job is not to make America a historical document or a historical anomaly. Our job is to show young people that these values are the values not just of the future, but they're the values of all time. And when I say the values of all time, to what end? It's not to my political power. It's not to my personal enrichment. It's not so that I can exert my will over anybody. When I say that these values are timeless, what I mean is they make the most number of people as happy as ever happened in human history. I just want people to be happy. If you really want to have somebody tell you what to do, that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But if you don't, you should have a place where you can philosophically where you can go and not only have that feel comfortable, but also have it make sense, and not only sense either, but moral sense. So the thing that we try to do here, and the reason Scott and I with this show, I think is just my favorite work that I've ever done, certainly, is that by playing devil's advocate, what Scott is doing is he is taking these belief systems and together we are running them through the ringer. We're not just stating them. We're stating them and then we're criticizing them and we're answering the criticisms and we're answering the rebuttals of the criticisms. And the comment that I have after we finish recording these shows, almost universally to Scott after the cameras go up, is, where did that come from? Where did that come from? And the answer is, it came from a philosophy that I've grown to understand, and I've come to understand it only because as I got more and more along with it, I kept thinking, no, idiot, this is not something that it gets more and more complicated as time goes on. This is something that gets simpler and simpler. You need to strip away all of this theoretical, philosophical stuff. It's like, no, don't hurt anybody. Don't take their stuff and do what you promise you're going to do. Simple, really. And these ideas need to be transmitted to the future by people who understand how young people think. And when I see flyers and stuff that come out of Republican groups and so on, and I have nothing but love and affection for them. They kept us in business. They kept us in the fight. But I often see the red, white, and blue flag unfurling, and I see dark letters on a red background and very, very busy and all of this stuff. And it looks like something was printed in 1860. And the Constitution should be printed, the preamble should be printed in black Helvetica on a white background. It should look like an Apple ad, because it is. It's that simple and it's that clear.
Well, I guess it shouldn't take a genius to be able to grasp truth that's self-evident. One final one, Bill, and this is from one of our members whose name is Chris, and I'm not sure how to interpret this because he does have one word in this sentence that has a letter and then a couple of asterisks. And as I've learned recently from Steven Crowder, asterisks can mean practically anything.
Yes.
So let me just, I'll just read through it and supply the word I think that is supposed to be in here. Chris says, it's time for me to get off my Apple and start supporting your content. Free speech, get this sentence, free speech that I may disagree with is always better than censored speech I do agree with. Thanks for all you do. Bill,
Wow.
that is a shocking statement for a guy who's basically saying, I'm willing to pay knowing that I won't always agree with you, but I'd rather have it this way than have nothing but access to things that I do agree with.
That is the most profoundly stated position, most profoundly stated summary of our position that I could come up with. You know, we were talking about this New York Times story where I got associated with Nazis and so on, and how hurt I was by that, and how libelous it seemed to me. And we had what am I trying to say? Oh, I remember. We had a moment there where this guy who this whole story was about becoming a neo-Nazi and stuff, he wanted to start his own YouTube channel, and I mean it. It's like, I mean, this guy had, not through his own designs, but just as used as a tool by the New York Times, had done us a lot of damage in terms of, you know, guilt by association that he didn't put there, the Times put there. But when he said I wanted him to have a YouTube channel and succeed, I meant it. And I was having this thought last night, strangely enough, Scott, and this morning as well. I really thought it's time to just basically say out loud, maybe I'll do the firewall on this week. To progressives out there, are there any of you left on the left, who are willing to fight, not to shut somebody up, but to protect their freedom to say what they want to say, no matter how much you disagree with it? This is a core classical liberal value. And a lot of times people say, what are you conservatives? I'm conserving classical liberalism, private property, freedom of speech, you know, personal responsibility, small government, all that stuff. But it is true. It's absolutely true. And I know that people on the left don't believe this because they seem to be missing this particular chromosome or something, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I know you mean it. I know people like Crowder and Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson, all the rest mean it. If people were coming along and trying to shut down channels like Young Turks or other progressive channels, just by trying to shut them off and cut off their money and deny them the ability to speak, I think we'd be fighting for them pretty much as hard as we're fighting for ourselves now. This is a fundamental difference between the two sides, and it goes to a great deal goes to the quality and the character of the people who are involved. Just saying things like character and quality are anathema to people on the left. So I know this whole thing looks like a giant commercial, but this is episode 184 of Bill Whittle now, and the fact of the matter is that on any given show we will have at least, never less than, 3,000 or 4,000 people watching the show who aren't members, and sometimes we'll have, like in a recent case, we'll have 150,000 people who are not members watching the show. And all we're trying to say here is this: the time for this kind of inaction is past, and it's getting worse every day. We are now at the point when it really is a question of us. It doesn't have to come to us. It'd be nice if it did, but it doesn't have to. But seriously, again, from the bottom of my heart, you have to understand that given the way the internet works and the fact that we don't charge commercials internally or any of that stuff, it's got to be paid for somehow. And the membership model is the only model that guarantees us the freedom of speech. When we worked at the former establishment, you and I, there were several occasions when I and Alfonso Rachel and a number of other people were told that we really can't say this. Now, it wasn't very often, and I don't mean to impugn them. They kept us alive and well-fed for 6-7 years. But nobody tells us what to say here because I don't have a boss that can fire me. I have 3,000 or 4,000 bosses, and they'd all have to agree to fire me. This is how the world works now. This is how it is made. This is how it's produced. This show, this office, it costs money to do this stuff. So, as a personal appeal, I would just say this again. Somebody once described to me the problem very succinctly. And that problem for us is that television is free and the internet is free. So television on the internet ought to be free. But it's not. And we're not selling detergent or beer in order to cover the cost of this. So it is at the point now where you as an individual have to decide if you think the threat level is high enough yet. If you think that the threat level is high enough, because they are trying to shut us down, and they're trying to shut us down because the election of Donald Trump proved to them that if the American people get to hear the truth, they will recognize it and they will vote on it, and that will be the end of their big plans for all of us.
And on the off chance that there's somebody watching here who hasn't seen this before and thinks that this channel must be a pro-Donald Trump channel and that's all we're about, the guy asking the questions on this show didn't vote for Donald Trump and still looks at him skeptically, praises him when he does well, and criticizes him when I disagree with him.
Let me just add one thing to this, because this is an important thing to say. Scott didn't vote for Donald Trump, and Scott didn't vote for Donald Trump out of principled reasons that I didn't completely agree with, but I certainly understood and respected. And this needs to be said. There were a number of people, a significant number of people, who said, I don't want to listen to a channel where Donald Trump is criticized. And there was some significant pressure for me to say, Scotty, you need to dial this back a little bit. It's hurting us financially. And not only did I not do that, I told Scott that we'll go down to 0 members if that's what it takes, because the idea of freedom of speech is that it's not always pleasant and it's not always agreeable. And sometimes, and Scott has been a champion of this, sometimes we need to be stuck in the side and reminded that we're human beings too. We make errors too. We make assumptions, and we make certain prejudicial attitudes that come from hearing the same thing over and over again. And Scott's just determined to not let that happen. And I support him 100% in that. So this is what you get when you get here, and you don't have to agree with everything. Don't want you to agree with everything. The great thing about this community, and this is really, the stick is they're really going after conservative outlets. The carrot is much more attractive. And that is that there's, thousands and thousands of people who are posting stories pretty much every day, connecting to each other, raising money for each other when wives have been hit by cars. And it's just an incredible family that is the signal honor of my life, to just be the little, I'm just the little particle that the raindrops fall around. But it is something, I think the main thrust I get from those quotes that you gave us is that it is something that you really have to experience to really appreciate how much you needed it when you didn't have it.
I want to thank the members whose comments we read on the air today. And I also want to thank the many people who have written us things that I have not read on the air.
Yeah,
we read every one of them.
All of them.
We read the comments that you post at billwhittle.com in that private website, but we also read a large majority of the comments that show up on YouTube. We are interested in hearing alternative views, and we are never so cocky in our own perspective on the truth that we think we can't be taught. And that's what I love about Bill Whittle Now. That's what I love about the atmosphere and the attitude at billwhittle.com. If that's the kind of thing you enjoy as well, you know what you can do. Just click that Become a Member link at billwhittle.com and join the growing band of people who appreciate civil dialogue, reasoned truth, frankly, a lot of laughter and mutual encouragement. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making this possible.